Hello beyond all reason lovers. In today's game it's quite an interesting one because we're going to look into the Gunslinger and its uses in 8v8, which you might think are very narrow, and we're going to break down why that's actually not the case. It's a very disrespected unit, and I think it's because it falls outside the meta play. It's not a tick, it's not a zombie horde, and it's not like some sort of super unit which is just an overmatch weapon like a fat boy, something like that. So you've got to know where and when to use it, or you've got to be lucky. And I think you can make your own luck sometimes. In this lobby here, Dr. Sen, who's an interesting character from Germany, actually asks Stark and Fury for a very early Gunslinger before anyone else gets their T2, and is perhaps going to pay the medal. We will see. But yeah, the tech actually agrees to this. That right there is a great hack you can do to give yourself an advantage in the game, is to ask for other units when you know they're teching early. In this case, it's usually going to be tech, just so you can maybe do some other units that might make you weaker. So you might be concentrating more on eco or just building grunts or something like that, which you know is generally going to be a pretty weak force, and so you need a stronger unit to hit around the 7-minute stage. It's going to help you out heaps. And so we see Dr. Sen, who we're really going to look at here, come up and guard this quite studiously. I think I'm in the game. I'm not sure where. Okay, so for this game, I'm practicing my air as Cortex, and maybe able to show you a thing or two about the eco and how that goes and how we go against our mirror matchup over here, who is actually experienced at air despite their OS. So we see some very minor forces, and Dr. Sen comes up just after the 4-minute stage, so nice and early, up to build this super greedy metal extractor. So we can see Dr. Sen is very bullish about building an eco on the front line here. It's going to hold this at all costs with very few units, and it actually seems to be working, sort of, which is quite amazing. We have Vuko coming across to help out with the missile truck. So the funny thing is, Dr. Sen says they'll pay for the Gunslinger and then only pays half the money, despite just about bleeding money. Although they kindly send over the energy as well. So thanks, Dr. Sen. It is something that does show what a noob game Blue is compared to any player in a high OS lobby, is people don't mind sharing resources so much, but in noob lobbies it's sort of this idea of, oh, I've got to keep all these resources on hand all the time and shore up as many as possible. This is why it pays to be aggro. Look at Dr. Sen, is just not even bothering to build defenses really beyond what is very, very low level. Sort of relying on the commander to do all the heavy lifting, which you sort of can in this area, but I can tell you what, this would have been punished if I was playing against Dr. Sen. There'd be no more commander there at the moment. But we see the saviour, the Gunslinger, come in to help Dr. Sen. So really I'd say this Gunslinger is not any sort of master plan unit. It was just sort of there to save Dr. Sen's butt. Because they know they're going to get rolled over in any sort of play. I will admit I'm mystified how Dr. Sen is an OS 26. Perhaps we'll see why in a second though. So the Gunslinger gets to action, and this is pretty cool. Like, the one thing about the Gunslinger, it's super easy to micro. It does take micro, but it's super easy to micro. You can essentially rely on the fact it's going to repair back itself, so you don't need to send it to the back for repairs or anything like that. You can use it with your other units and just sort of have them in the front, take in all the fire. And so you're on the screen anyway, it's not that hard. As you can see, it's just sort of let's move here, let's move there. In fact, it's easy to over micro this unit. You don't want to have it standing against too many light laser towers, but you always got to sort of keep an eye on the front line and very quickly get a way to build things in your base. You really should be trying to hotkey things up and flick back to the base, do one command, and then come back to the Gunslinger. So with this Overwatch here being really hard for the Gunslinger, particularly a solitary one, we see the Gunslinger come around the side and try and take a different tack. Now it's about the 11-minute stage, so it's not super early anymore. Has it been worth it to delay other people's T2? I doubt it. This is probably why someone asked this about going no. But it does make me think about running the Gunslinger myself, because it's just quite a pest unit, properly microed of course. At this stage of the game, there's nothing that can take it out too quickly. So I'm running with air at the moment, and I'm doing a few little different things that you might find useful. I always build about 3 shuriken just to stop any leaks which might come up and have them not up in the air so they don't get shot down. I try and build now quite a few Valiants and keep out of T2 for a while, just because they're quite good craft anyway, and it just saves a lot of money. And they only cost about 73 metal each, so it's possible to get quite a few on the field, as it were. So we're about the 12-minute mark. We're starting to build up steadily now, but we've already got enough to defend our airspace from pretty much anything they can throw at us. Also, we've built a heap of advanced solar collectors, but just in case, I'm starting to build a couple of these now. Arbalists right up the front, because we're such a huge target and tech as well. I'm trying to cover both sort of approaches, canyon approach and frontal approach, with these super effective anti-flak turrets, which should be able to deal with any excess in case we do all get wiped out here, just in a mega timing run bombing rush. We can see about 50 on their side. I think they're Armada, compared to about 50 on our side, so we have the lead at the moment. So this Gunslinger not even being used anymore, and I think that's partially because the gauntlet here is quite scary and needs to be used in ideally with other units when attacking static defences. These are really good actually for air, because getting down a quick reactor at the start isn't actually possible. It's always going to take a while, and you might have to sacrifice your commander or something like that to just get it up in time, whereas these are like mini reactors in their efficiency, just slightly worse, and you can get them up a lot sooner, which means you can have energy for your aircraft to produce at this rate. Also, we can get an advanced energy converter and get a little bit more metal. So yeah, for all that, the Gunslinger's doing a lot of sitting around. And if you want to keep it alive, that's the best way, is just to use it for short little bursts and then sort of bring it back. Don't allow it to get too much heat. And then bring it in at the ultimate time of battle. Let's have a look at this hero. I think we're probably now going to see the actual use of the Gunslinger in a combined arms force, while it's still against a T1 army. They do really well. One thing to note about the Gunslinger is it doesn't miss a lot. Basically at all. And I think that's what makes it so good. This is wrecking. Even taking down the power plant very easily. And the T1, when it's dispersed like this, just can't do anything against it. So it might be a good go to actually use sprinters along with Gunslingers. And certainly pawns, of course, as well. Takes out a commander. Just been waiting for its time, that noble Gunslinger. Single-handedly destroying the enemy. This Gunslinger is now so experienced, its DPS is well over 300. Its range is 456, which is insane for this unit. It's also sitting on about 2.3k health. Quite a good unit. And if you can get these guys advanced, as this guy, this is well worth the 650 metal. Finally down now to destroy the other base as well is this Gunslinger. I sort of feel a bit sorry for this Gunslinger in the end, because it's going to die to Aphis. Oh no, move it away. DPS is 370. So in the end, that Gunslinger, I'm not sure about the range, but the DPS was almost 400. That's not bad. It's not bad. And the other team at this point just gives up. That Gunslinger was just, too OP for this team. So it ended up being a good use of metal. I just want to quickly show before we do anything else, because I think the other air was a low OS, so various. Compared to us, had a very similar economy actually. They were scaling nicely with the metal produced. We weren't quite there with the metal produced, not really, because a lot of it was actually producing these aircraft. In the end, I made a lot more than I realised. I have 100 up at the 17-minute mark. And I think that's going to stop any sort of bombing run they can do, particularly with the anti-air flak. I think it's well worth it putting down these advanced solar collectors before getting into the fusion reactors. So at the 17-minute mark or so, we have plenty of aircraft in the sky. We actually have a scaled economy happening of about 70 mil a second, which is not too bad at the 17-minute stage. So that's this game. I want to quickly now roll into the next game where we're going to look at an actual more timely use of Gunslinger and how you guys might actually use it rather than just sort of scabbing one off eco. Let's produce one ourselves and see how it's good, because we didn't see it truly shine until it was used a little bit later in the game. Now the second game I'm going to showcase is actually an interesting game, because when I joined this lobby I thought we were dead for sure. We had someone calling out Crisp Corp saying you got to build units, mate, and I'm looking at the actual ranks here. On our side, our red is a 3 Chev noob. We've got a 2 Chev as Chris Corp, who doesn't build units apparently. And we've also got a 3 Chev over here on yellow. So I'm looking, righto, okay, well obviously it's a balanced game. They must have likewise plenty of low ranked players, and they do, but they're not so high OS, so it doesn't affect the algorithm so much. And they only have 2 of them and they're both 3 Chevs. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, geez, we're up against a lot more experience, particularly the blue, which is like a super duper experienced silver here. And I look across and I see Baby Gay in the enemy eco spot and I'm like, well, we've got a chance. We're not getting the most favourable wind here, so I've built this a little bit late, this energy storage, and modified my build accordingly. So what we've got is this very unfortunate leak at this time, and so I'm having to build ticks in response. As part of eco, because I'm having to also heal up at the same time. I'm not sure if it heals my lab first before it actually produces the ticks. I might actually put some ticks as a fast response force just for this occasion, so I don't have to heal this lab back up, because this has set me back heaps. Now it's at this stage, about the 8-minute mark or so, especially if I've been paid for the T2s, which I'm starting to basically say to people now, no free T2s, just so I get paid. And we start glutting metal at about this stage when we get those first 3 metal extractors up, and particularly after this one, as our advanced construction bot's going to take a little while to trundle across to the next mechs. Unfortunately, because we've got the noobs, they're not really coming up to the sides here. Chris Corp, who's already got T2 I think, and we've got Redder over here, which is defending the canyon unfortunately, so wrong place. So I think we're going to see Ramjet identify this and send some units out, but we've got poor 3 Chev in this lane. I mean, this is looking lost. Look at Motorpad. Actually doing quite well for this tiny little defensive bastion. So yeah, amidst being paid, I think this is probably the best time to get out some gunslingers and apply some pressure. We could always get a early reactor and sort of go super duper eco, of course, but I just sort of think eco has this great advantage in a noob game as well to really affect the front quite a lot and put a lot of pressure on the other team, and particularly when it might fall like it currently looks like it's going to do, then it's actually necessary. No reason I can't get a early reactor down now. We're glutting so much metal, so I'm having to get further construction turrets now. Poor old Motorpad's having to basically rebuff this invasion that was trying to come up here. Really, our team's doing quite well on the front, all things considered, particularly yellow. Poor old Motorpad says I'm going to lossy my front. That's quite the accent for an American. But Motorpad's been doing a stellar job. So I'm coming forward now with my pressure units, the Gunslingers. I mean, this is not super early, it's just before the 14-minute mark, because I haven't neglected my eco. I'm building some reactors, doing the right thing, try and do everything all at once. The Gunslinger fits this role nicely, so in the case of we've got other units around us, we're not just trying to hero everything ourselves. And they can take a few Janus hits. See how they recover back from that? Usually most units would just about be useless after those Janus hits, and that's why, Janus, that's why it's such an effective unit, is it effectively kills the units. So I've been able to sneak around the back with aggression and take down some targets of opportunity, some Lazarus. I've got this very experienced laser turret here, actually doing quite a lot of damage. We're able to take it easily, so I think 2 or 3 is a sweet spot amount of Gunslingers, because they are expensive. We want to keep them alive, but we also want to be aggressive when we see a target like this, right? So here I should have pulled this Gunslinger back over here and allowed a little bit of healing to take place. Just think it can, tank everything, which it sort of can. It's tanked a lot more than I expected to. We've even got a commander here to come try and attack us, and that's never going to work. So effectively we've turned this into a nice little run by now. And actually all 3 survive. I thought one of them would have got killed by now. And the only thing that's going to take us out is all these tigers hitting us from another side. So that does happen when you try and do a run by. Without that help, all the way from over here, so it's from the leftmost lane had to help out with that, and we can see they're getting pummeled at the moment. So that was a useful usage of the Gunslingers, even though they got sacrificed. I'm happy with that, and so I'm coming forward now with hounds to continue the pressure. We've got Zifnab, which is just a superior player, coming forward with bots and overrunning with bots, which is really hard to do. Actually fearless. Look, there's just 2 thugs against all these T1 units. Look at the stream of bots coming down, so I guess just going full aggression mode, which is working out for Zifnab. I'm moving forward with those ticks we built before to help out with the scouting while we wait for our radar bot to catch up. Hounds are a really good follow-up because we're going to find hounds of ourselves we're up against, we're going to find longer range units. It allows us to stand off and really bother the enemy. It's not enough of a death ball to really take down tanks easily at the moment, but it's still enough to be super annoying, don't worry about that. Whenever I micro, I tend to send these guys back for a little bit. I think it'd be well worth it to have ticks getting produced in a consistent fashion at this point as well, and a repair bot or 2. So I think I'll incorporate a T1 lab again into my play to help support the hounds. And for how good they are, I think this force just isn't quite enough. 10, I think 15 would be better. They're just so cheap, guys, for what they do. 300. Now we've got that critical mass, we're able to take down the enemy hounds or enemy takedown very quickly. See Crisp Corp actually helping out with these Jaguars, which is super cool. Was told what to do by our teammates here. So that's effective noob helping. Is you can yell at people all you want, but that's not going to produce results. In fact, it's going to make them play worse. But if you do instruct people and assume they just don't know what really they're doing, it might need a little bit of simple guidance as well. Then they can actually do something. I'm quite liking my efficiency at the moment. I don't think I'm microing this very well. I just think it's the fact I'm in a noob lobby. Perhaps we have so much fun with this. I've also got a well-rounded force. We've got a welder and 2 archangels as well, just to help deal with spam response. Unfortunately, a counter unit to this is something like the rattlesnake. What a beast of a unit. It does a surprising amount of damage really quickly to the hounds. So we see the enemy going full pork here in response to our pressure. And that's a win in of itself. Overbuilding these 2.5k metal units, having 3 of them, that is unbelievable amounts of pork. Back at home, despite doing all this, by now we've reclaimed the T2 lab and well into the production of the APHIS and then the experimental gantry. I've sort of muffed this base a fair bit and how I've built it, but that's okay, I've gotten away with it with all my micro I'm doing elsewhere. Also, I'm finding at this stage, around the 20-minute stage when we're building our first APHIS, about 22 turrets seems to be a pretty good sweet spot, even maybe a couple more. That seems to be the ideal number. I send these back to get repaired. We'll see what 3 Chev Yellow does with them. Whenever you give units to others, don't do it, because they don't respect your units. Now, Senza might have all the best intentions for these units, but I know how hopeless a task this is with those plasma batteries, so I should have just kept hold of the units and kept them in reserve. Or are they actually doing something with them? I think they just expect too much out of my poor hounds. So a good reminder, never give away your units, especially in a noob lobby. Zifnab's utter aggression has really paid off, but the mammoth has come out. That's a lot of hit points to get through. And a heap of welders from PBK. I think that's going to turn the tide of the battle. So we can see Eco responding to the pressure by building all these T2 units, and they're trying to APHIS up at the same time, but we don't see an experimental lab around the 22-minute stage. So this pressure is working wonderfully. The welders are a great unit, by the way, for tech to produce an emergency situation, but they definitely are overbuilding, and I'd much rather send my Razorback against those welders than the other way around. Not too late, honestly, for how much I muffed up this base. I even built this fusion reactor super late up here, because I built it out of my construction turret, so I was just sort of microing too much and not doing things properly. Also, I tend to have an issue of never building enough of these advanced energy converters for the 2 APHIS. It's always just a tiny bit delayed, but hey, the team gets a little bit extra energy for a couple of minutes, that's fine. So I'm all ready to help Zifnab because I have seen some effective aggression, but then I get a bit worried because I see this pulsar. I'm like, Zifnab, what are you doing? We're not breaking through anywhere else. We're definitely not breaking through onto this pork. Look at all this. Pork Mark II coming up here with a heap of star lights. This is not looking good. So I coordinate with Zifnab and I say it's ready to attack. Now it's a little bit early for me. You know, the fact that I've got the hounds there, I'm happy enough to contribute to my 2 Razorbacks at this time. We'll see how these Razorbacks go against welders, particularly that aren't getting microed over much. Yeah, they're pretty good, honestly. Smoking carcasses are welders. Don't expect too much out of them. They are only a 350 metal unit. They got a lot of tank for that 350 metal. But notice against a skirmisher that it only has half really the DPS and a little bit more health and a lot less range. So the Gunslinger is not necessarily worse than the role they're trying to fill, the welders. The Gunslinger is just a little bit more uneconomical when they're noob units. So thanks to Zifnab's pressure before, we've been able to blow through this, you know, really easy. And that's the best way to use this T3 push, is just go wherever it has been exploited, and that's usually canyon. Yeah, so many pit bulls going up here, and this is the issue with the front line at times, is the amount of porcupine. Which is good for us, because they're over-investing into the front line, but it's really hard to defend this all equally, and we've got to attack the weak point. That's military basics 101. That's why you do probing attacks. You can find out where the weak point is, and you push through that region as fast as you can. Now unfortunately we do get the response by now. Even the slow starlights have managed to wind all the way back. So we've sent 1 Razorback around the side to hopefully take out air. Look how much damage they do, how quickly. It's stupendous. We're going to get taken out by the commander here, but takes down their own mech. So that's a tremendous amount of damage. This air is pretty much handicapped because of that. Over this side, I've been able to run razors through at the same time because this front line was basically gutted to respond to the canyon push. So it was more just happenstance or luck, but I was counting on it, is them taking away this front line and me being able to just walk through the Razorbacks really fast and apply pressure. Once the force does come back though, I should have pulled back a little bit early. I just got a little bit greedy. That was enough damage, and we've pretty much taken out this player as well. Look at all these mechs has done. This is not looking great for them, or Cat. So they've actually tried to resign the team at this stage. Despite being eco, we're well leading the damage before half an hour mark. And I've gone straight to Titans actually. Just because with all those starlights, I just need something a little bit more durable than like Razorbacks. You see very good push from Zifnab, and building these Archangels, plenty of them, which is really impressive. I love it when players do this. Pretty much make air useless by doing that in a large fashion, particularly so forward to the air base. They can hardly build a aircraft and it's getting taken down by all these Archangels. I'm a bit concerned about yellow, as always, because only 3 chefs pretty much on the verge of getting run over all the time, particularly with these starlights. If I was the owner of these starlights, 100% I would be pushing into this weakness. But we are starting to see some definite tick span coming out, so that opportunity has been lost. I see it's secure enough for now, and I wander back, plan out my next push. So it's stupid really, you think Canyon would be defended much better, but no. So Zifnab's taken full advantage of this and attacking from the side. I don't really understand it, but we do see a response force come through. The Archangels will try and do some tanking. Tiger's running down these snipers very efficiently. Fantastic work. I'm coming around the side here now while they're distracted by this attack, and we're not going to get any response force ourselves. So we're just trying to clear up the front line here a little bit, and maybe poke through if we can, but we are stopped by a couple of Razorbacks. We see now this tremendous attack from our air, who's just been waiting for this time. This massive air force. This is insane. We see like 20 bombers come through, which I think is the way to go. If you really want to do overwhelming damage and make sure no AA is going to take you down too quickly, I think the 20 bombers is a fantastic choice. Pretty much the enemy team have lost at this point as soon as that's happened. even the canyon, this wasn't actually a lost game at all, and the front line was so well porcupined. If they just would have had some more units here and pushed into canyon a bit more, I think this would have been a really good stand-up game. And of course, we haven't been destroyed yet, so our eco is against a 0 eco, which means we essentially got free titans to use, even against this porcupine. And yeah, Titan beats Pulsar finally. The funny thing I've noticed about the Titan is you can micro the different static defences, and they still want to, shoot all the ticks that are running past them. So it is a little bit annoying. This is why I think perhaps it's good to have a T1 lab producing some Lazarus in that. Just for if you do get to this stage that you've got your Titans out, the whole point of having this huge health pool is to micro them and not waste them. So send them back and get them repaired up. Whereas now I've got to think about that, I've got to build a T1 lab and do all that. So it's going to take me a few minutes basically to repair up this very expensive Titan. Again, look at this huge amount of air coming through. So remember guys, we were up against it, we were having to carry some serious noobs during this game, and every one of our expert players, even our noobs themselves of course, acquitted themselves well, but particularly our air, all played our part. None of us sat back. Absolutely brutal thrashing from air. So Zifnab and me, we were the real attackers in the end, apart from air. Even Red here done a really good defense of the canyon, was quite good efficiency. Ramjet helped out a lot. Even Chris Corp, done okay. Contributed. I was really happy with what Senzanome, or Yellow, was up to. Really held a quite difficult front line and didn't give up all game, despite just getting absolutely beaten up. Just kept on building static defences. Even the commander was still alive in the end. I mean, they were up against this. Just massive porcupine, and yeah. And that's what I'd like to think the early game pressure does. And my idea behind the Gunslinger is to really make the opposing team quite nervous about run-bys and the general quality of your plays. And so they have to overbuild all the static defences to make sure that never happens again. And that's the whole plan, is to put enough pressure between the 10 to 20 minute stage, and that's T2 pressure, and then T3 pressure at the 20 to 30 minute stage, to pretty much have the opposing team on the back foot, and then we can continue scaling at that point quite comfortably, because they're on the back foot and they're not able to aggress against us at any sort of decent level. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you found this an interesting game. I quite like this noob game. I quite like a lot of noob games now, actually. I find that a lot of fun. Even if you are a noob yourself, join up. The vibe is much more positive now, and people will instruct you if you don't even have a clue. I do recommend you try and follow a guide or two like this. Try and come up with some sort of build order. But, even if you don't, other people will carry you. So it's that sort of game. And it's usually a lot of fun. Usually in a high OS lobby, let's say there's less room for maneuver, to be creative and do special gunslinger plays and things like that, and really feel the value of some units. Thanks very much for watching today. See you next time.